Welcome to the Discipleship Toolbox Breakout. My name is Tracy Henkel. I'm the Discipleship Director at the Clinton Twp campus.
And I'm Justin Warrens. I'm the lead pastor at our Birmingham campus. And we're so excited that you are joining us. One of the things that in this specific breakout we want to talk about is this idea of discipleship and some of the tools that our team has created to help us grow in that process. Now, for me, I don't know for you, but I grew up with a lot of different views of what discipleship is. Is it a class that I have to take, a program, a set of different experiences of books that I have to read? And I started realizing as I was wrestling with this idea of discipleship and our team started to talk, we realized that there's a lot of discipleship kind of experiences that are very organized. Maybe they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps that you have to take. And a lot of those kind of ideas I would talk about are very organized, like a stair going up. But then there's other ideas like an organic experience, more like relational. There isn't exactly maybe a rhythm or rhyme to it. It just happens. And my image in my mind when it comes to that one is a forest, that there's this forest that you're wandering within. But then we started asking this question of how do we create something a little bit more intentional so that not only can we grow in our journey of faith, but that we can walk with others. And so this image that I've kind of just kept to over this past season is this image of a river that cuts through a forest. It has emotion to it. It has a flow to it. It has a pace. There's an intentionality. And we can enter onto this river at different paces in different seasons, and we can go at those different seasons. And I kind of picture this idea as a catalytic movement. And that's what I think about discipleship. There are these catalytic moments that lead to catalytic movement in our lives. And for me, as I kind of thought about the leadership journey for all of us, there's a season where we begin to lead ourselves. We're going to show you this picture of leadership where we lead ourselves and then we begin to lead others and then we begin to lead leaders. And depending on whether you're in business or even in the church, you begin to lead maybe larger groups of people, organizations, you lead movements. And it's this journey, this pipeline that we go on. But what I believe that is so powerful is that in that journey, there are these catalytic moments that have happened for us, with people around us that have spurred us on. And so what we want to talk about, this toolbox, is what we believe are some catalytic tools that can help do that in our lives. So we're going to kind of lean into that as Tracey walks us through the purpose of the Leadership and Discipleship Toolbox.
Thanks, Justin. You know, when you're talking about steps 1, 2, 3, that type of thinking that we go down a pathway, it made me think of college when it was like, take this class 101 and then take 201 and 301. And that's not the way that life happens, really. That's not the way discipleship naturally happens. So we've created 6 tools. We're going to put an image up there for you to look at that we have created for you to walk through to learn how to use this to discipleship others in whatever circumstance you find yourself in. And we really called it a toolbox because that just makes sense. Everyone knows they need tools to do something. And if you have the right toolbox, it will go so much better, don't you think? Mm-hmm. I specifically am thinking about my husband and I recently decided to restore a vintage camper. And we had no tools, literally. We didn't know what we were doing. Go in the store, I was like, we need a circular saw. How about that one? Luckily, it worked out for us. But if we didn't have the right tools, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And side note, we did finish it and we're still married. So the right tools do the right job. Anyhow, so we have 6 tools. I'm just going to talk about each of them briefly and kind of give you a summary of what they are. The first one is called intentional life. And the symbol for that one, we're using a triangle and it says up, in, and out. And it's really talking about the different relationships that we need to have in our lives. We've got to have an up relationship with the Lord. We've got to have an in relationship with our close people like our small groups. And then we have to be able to move out. And each of these tools, by the way, is really modeled after the way Jesus lived his life. This is his example for us on how to disciple other people. So we really chose these because we can relate them back to Jesus' life too. The second one is hearing from God, and the symbol for that one is 2 question marks, because when you're trying to hear from God, you ask yourself 2 questions. What is God saying, and what does he want me to do about it? It's imperative that we know how to listen and help others learn how to listen and hear from God. So super great tool, easy one to talk to because we're only focusing on helping someone learn how do I answer those 2 questions. The third one is an invitation and challenge setup. It's the plus sign. It's a matrix. It's called grace and truth. And Jesus modeled for us in the Bible, really, he was all full of invitation. Come and follow me. But it wasn't all fun and games. He challenged the people that followed them to think differently, to act differently. And so we call that invitation and challenge matrix, but it's based on grace and truth. The next tool is one of my favorite ones. It's the leadership square, and it's all about leading others. And I don't know if everyone realizes we are all in a place of influence over someone. We all have an opportunity to lead. So that word leadership can sometimes scare people, but it's for everyone. And so at any place in time, we can be in a different place of working with someone to help them become a better leader and grow. And so each of the sides of the square has a different task for each side. So for instance, it starts out, I'm leading. If I were leading Justin, I lead, and you just watch me. And then after that, I'm leading. I'll say, hey, Justin, can you help? And then after that, I'll say, Justin, I think it's time for you to lead a little bit, and I'll just help. And then after that, it's like, take off, Justin. You are ready to go on the fourth side. But then the most important thing is just keeps going on and on and on. And so the leadership square is something to keep in mind, that we just don't say, hey, here's how you do it, and throw you in. We want to give you tools to do it in an orderly way that empowers the person that you're leading. The next one is I, C, and U, and that's all about encouragement. It's our encouragement module. The letters are so perfect. I, C, and U. Get it? Right? Super simple. Encouragement. And this is one of the most important tools, because we always have to be looking for ways to encourage others. No one wants to come and be in relationship with you if you have nothing positive to say to them, but yet it doesn't always come natural. We are not natural encouragers. So this module helps you learn how to be an encouraging leader to bring others along in your discipleship path. And then the last one is sharing your story. And we've got a bubble, a little word bubble for that one. And I don't know about you, but I think every time I hear someone's story, it is such an encouragement to me. But we don't all know how to do it. And we could go on and on and on, and we lose the person because we haven't really thought about how to share your story. So this module really helps you refine, what is my own story, and how do I share it in a way that others want to know more? They want to know more about my journey, and in discovering that, they know more about Jesus, and they feel like, hey, I could grow in my faith too. I could learn more too. So those are 6 tools in the toolbox that are available to you. And say, I want to point out something to you. The first time you ever use a tool, like when my husband and I got that circular saw, we didn't know what we were doing. We literally had to open up the manual and go step by step and say, how do I put the blade on? It was a little clunky at first. It might feel like that the first time that you do this, but we've made them in a way that everyone can walk through it. We actually have a leadership guide for every single one of them. And Justin and I thought it'd be good to go through the I, C, and U, the encouragement module right now, and just kind of walk you through it so you could see how you can use these tools.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've done is as you're tuning into this breakout, this is actually available to you as a downloadable or in person. And we're looking forward to kind of sharing it with you because we want you to see and experience it with us together. Now, what I love real quick that Tracy just walked us through, this overview, every single one of these tools has an image. There's something that we can use. And again, we're going to look at this encouragement one, but you can use it in every single setting you are in. You can use it in your family. You can use it in your home. You can use it in your workplace. That's what's beautiful about these tools. You're able to bring them along with you and share them in every catalytic moment and conversation that arises that is available to you. And so we're going to look at this encouragement one. Now, my favorite part about this encouragement, I, C, and U, this image or words that are kind of come together, is that it's something that I think too often we miss. We're so fast-paced in life. We're running at such a fast pace that we miss slowing down and encouraging people, seeing them where they're at, and encouraging them to take a next step. And so that's what's so powerful about this tool. I want to read a few scriptures that you might see in your document that you have. It's this. Like 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, "Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just in fact you are doing." Hebrews 10, verse 24 and 25 said, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another." And we saw that modeled in the early church, and we know how significant that is for us. So when I think about this tool in a way that I would use it, I would just kind of step into maybe a coffee conversation with a friend and say, hey, I know that you're kind of navigating some tough stuff at home, and you asked me a question about how do you kind of encourage your children or your spouse? Like, how do I do this? And I go, why don't you and I kind of meet up over coffee? I'm going to send you something to read. There's an article in it I'd love for you to read, and then let's talk about it together. And maybe you can share some of your reflections that you had and see what happens. What would you do if you had that opportunity to sit down with somebody?
Well, Justin, you're the king of coffee conversations, so I knew he would illustrate it like that. And I could see you with a napkin, kind of drawing the little symbol out. Let's talk about this. I'm a little bit different. My circles of influence are more different small groups, and I lead a couple of women's groups, and so I would probably be thinking and looking at the people in my group, and maybe some of you lead a group too, and thinking, I think Erin is ready to move on to maybe dig into something a little bit deeper, like let's challenge her. And I would invite her and maybe a couple others and say, hey, let's just 3 or 4 of us meet together and go through this content that we would send them and to preview ahead of time, like Justin said, read the article, look at some scripture, and let's just sit and talk about it together. That's probably how I would use it most. Or there have been times where maybe somebody in my group is just really struggling. They're just not getting something. Maybe they're asking the question like, how come you can hear from God and I can't hear from God? And I could say, hey, I have the perfect thing to walk you through. And I might do it like that.
I love those because each one of those dynamics, whether in a group setting, a one-on-one setting, or just a random conversation, you know this about me. I love the fact that we can take a tool and just write it on a napkin. It's actually like one of my rules for anything when it comes to discipleship. Can I write it on a napkin and share it and actually leave it with somebody? But what's so interesting about this specific one is there's an article in here, and we're not going to take the time to read it now, but it's an article that talks about this practice of hero making. Are you leading with this bias towards saying yes to other people, to encouraging them where they were at? And I wanted to just share a couple of the highlights for me in this one. One of them is this idea is how do we move from this place of being heroes to hero makers? And I think what the foundational aspect of this I see in you tool is we want other people to experience more of God's love, more of God's grace, and more of God's adventure for them. And so when we call out saying, I see something in you, I see that you have the ability to lead. I see a passion in you. I see strength in you. I see a great father or mother in you. We're speaking words of life. And we're leveraging this simple tool and saying, I can use this in every single setting. I can use this with my children. Like I have 4 kids, so it's absolute chaos. I have to remember this tool all the time to say, I see in you, especially in this season, your resilience in a season that has been very difficult. I see your ability to go back to your sister and apologize. I see that in you. And then almost going, do you see that in yourself? And then I've even used this tool with one of my daughters of like, what do you see in your sister? What can you encourage of her rather than correct her? Which is typically my temptation, right? Like I would rather correct somebody than encourage them. Right? As parents, as friends, as a boss, right? Like this is so easy for me to kind of struggle with that. But what about you? When you see this I see in you tool, how do you use that actual tool with people that you are living life with?
Well, typically I'm often because of my role as Discipleship Director, I'm looking for people with leadership qualities, and usually they don't think that they could be a leader. And so I use this to say, how can I show them, just like Justin was illustrating, what I see in them and how I know you're wired this way, and I could see how you could use that with this group of women, that type of thing. So my children are grown, so I'm not at that point of remembering, I wish I would have had this tool when they were younger. It might be a little bit different right now, but I wouldn't think of it in my family because I'm not raising little ones. But I do have some children who are making different decisions than I would make. And so I have used that posture of this is how do you see that working for you? I see that you're really working hard. Is this working out? So it can be applied to any different thing, not just a person's walk and journey with Christ and discipling, but also at home like you illustrated. So it's invaluable. It's just invaluable. So one caveat is though, this can probably seem a little bit overwhelming and might even seem a little bit difficult, but I do want you to know we created each of these tools so anyone can lead anyone through it. In fact, not only is there the participant guide that you send out to people that you're inviting to do this ahead of time, there's a leadership guide, and we just plugged in all the questions for you. Anyone can do this. We've made these tools so simple to use.
You know, as we think about this, and we want to kind of close our time here, but one of the things that I think about with all of these tools is they transcend. They transcend just a church environment. They transcend just a simple Bible study conversation. They're so much more powerful, deep, and impactful and useful in our lives. I love what Derwin Gray, it's a quote out of the article, said about this. When we use an IC and U tool, or just any tool of this discipleship toolbox, he says, we believe in multiplication and replication within the body. That's him basically saying, like, we believe in discipleship happening where we make other people heroes and become hero makers rather than being the hero of the story. He said, but you have to see that in people, say it, encourage it, and then equip them for what God wants to do in them and through them As a leader, you have to ask, how do I give people permission to dream and then pursue that dream? That's the power of one simple yet significant tool. It can lead to catalytic decisions in people's lives. It can maybe be something so simple, so small, a simple conversation that can have significant and big impact in them, in their parenting, in the workplace, or in the small group that you lead. And this is the power of these discipleship tools. So one of the things that we're going to end up doing is we have all of these resources available to you. And like Tracy said earlier, I love that idea of like, it's going to take some time to grow into. But that's everything, isn't it? Like, it's never just step 1, step 2, step 3 and arrive. And we don't want to just be wandering around the forest. We want a movement, a motion, and we want to experience those catalytic moments. And so we believe these tools will equip you to do that, not only in your own life as you lead yourself, but as you lead others and lead leaders in and around the community. So thank you so much for tuning in with us.